In today's video, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant, and I'm going to be talking about the top 3 reasons that I believe you might be overweight. My name is Lance Hitchings, and I created this channel to share what I've learned on my quest to turn back the clock. Okay, so let's say you're a guy who's getting a bit on in years, and you've noticed that you're a bit overweight, or maybe you're a lot overweight. Now, I know that you probably think you know the reason why. Way too much pizza and beer, way too much time spent on the couch, and not nearly enough time spent in the gym, right? But it may not be as simple as that. As we age, our bodies change in ways that are familiar to us, but also in ways that are unfamiliar, are unexpected, and not readily discernible to us. Our metabolism slows down. Our bodies store and process fat and muscle differently. And our hormones, which control every aspect of our bodily functions, are in decline. Which brings me to reason number 3 for why you might be overweight. All right, reason number 3 that you might be overweight might be that you have poor hormone health, that your hormones aren't optimized, meaning that you have low levels of testosterone, human growth hormone, and possibly thyroid. As you age, testosterone levels can drop by as much as 1 to 1.5% per year. And human growth hormone drops by as much as 14 to 15% per decade. This means that a 60-year-old man can have less than half of the testosterone and only 5% of the human growth hormone that he had at age 25. Insulin-like growth factor, or IGF-1, is what human growth hormone is converted into in the liver, and which has the anabolic effect that we're looking for from human growth hormone. And it mirrors the decline in human growth hormone. Studies have shown that a decrease in testosterone directly correlates to an increase in body fat. And human growth hormone suppresses the uptake of glucose or blood sugar, causing your body to crank up the fat-burning mechanism in order to obtain energy. Low levels of human growth hormone suppress this mechanism. So if you have low levels of testosterone and human growth hormone, your body is much more likely to be very efficient at storing fat and less efficient at burning fat. So as you can see, if you have poor hormone health, if your hormones aren't properly optimized, you're much more likely to be overweight. Now, I know you've already guessed this one. Reason number 2 is not enough exercise. We live sedentary lives, but we were not evolved to do so. We started out as hunter-gatherers, and we lived very active lifestyles. Then our society turned into an agrarian one, and we still burned a ton of calories farming. But then we evolved into an industrialized society, and we gradually became more and more sedentary. And as we created technologies for both creating our food and making our lives easier, we became a society of couch potatoes. While 70% of us claim to hate sitting, 86% of us do it all day, every day. And when we get up, more than half of us use getting food as an excuse. We sit at work, while we're commuting, while we're eating, and while we're watching TV, gaming, on our computers, or lounging. We're sitting for 13 hours a day, on average. When you factor in that we're sleeping for 8 hours a day, that only leaves 3 hours a day for non-sedentary activities. Yet, only 31% of us go to the gym. So the sad reality is that most of us are taking in way more calories than we're actually burning, and we're becoming obese as a result. And it's not just that we're taking in more calories than we need. The calories that we're taking in are not the kind of calories that we need. Which brings me to reason number 1. And reason number 1 is the food supply. And you'll notice that I said food supply, not that you're eating too much, although that's probably a big part of the problem. But the food supply is the real culprit here. Since 1940, the food supply has become increasingly taken over by ultra-processed, refined, industrialized food. According to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, 61% of the food that Americans eat is highly processed. Another article I read put it at 70%, while yet another stated that 80% of our food budget is spent on processed foods. So what do I mean by processed and refined foods? Some sources consider things like olive oil, chocolate, and coffee beans to be processed foods because they're not in their natural state, and they've been processed in order to get them into a state in which they can be consumed. But for me, those aren't processed foods. Processed foods is something very specific, and it encompasses a few definitions. Processed or refined foods are foods that are produced in a highly industrialized environment. Believe it or not, the food industry does not have your best interests at heart. Their primary concern is not providing Americans with wholesome foods. Its primary concern is to lower costs as much as humanly possible and to provide their stockholders with as large a profit as possible. So for me, when talking about processed and refined foods, processing starts on the farm. Feedlot beef, industrialized poultry farms, and corporate farms that raise GMO crops all fit into my definition of processed foods. Any farming techniques that places profits over wholesomeness and nutrition. Industrialized farming utilizes two techniques that I personally find objectionable. The first has to do with labor. The goal is to produce as much food as possible using the least amount of labor as possible. Now, yes, I know, the invention of the tractor certainly falls into this category, but I'm not talking about simple labor-saving devices. I'm talking about practices like feedlot beef, factory farms, and GMO crops. The other technique that I find objectionable is the practice of using a variety of chemical compounds to improve the weight and volume of the things we eat, and to create that weight and volume in the shortest time possible. An example of this would be adding synthetic growth hormones and antibiotics to the feed of beef cattle raised in feedlots in order to get them to market-ready weight in as much as half the time of grass-fed cattle. But most of the processing takes place once our foods have been harvested or butchered and sent to a factory to be turned into the name brands that we're familiar with in our supermarkets. Here, the foods are cooked and combined with sweeteners, spices, oils, flavors, colors, and preservatives to improve taste and add visual appeal. The FDA currently allows for over 5,000 different chemical compounds that are not foods to be used as additives in the processing of our foods. And so you wind up with cake mixes and potato chips and soda pop and instant ready-to-eat foods that are not real foods and that are full of empty calories and chemical additives. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 80% of all adults and 1/3 of children now meet the clinical definition of overweight or obese. 80%. And this rise in obesity started around 1940, the same time we introduced processed foods into our diets. Worldwide, since 1980, the obesity rate has doubled in 73 countries and increased in 113 others. But it's not how much we're eating that's the problem. We're consuming fewer calories now than we did 15 years ago. It's what we're eating that's the problem. All of our biological systems for regulating energy, hunger, and satiety are run off the rails by eating foods that are high in sugars, high in polyunsaturated fats, low in fiber, and injected with additives. And the solution to being obese, to being overweight? Go on a diet. But diets do not work. And not just the paleo diet or Atkins or South Beach, but all diets. We've known since 1959 that 95 to 98% of attempts to lose weight fail, and that 2/3 of dieters gain back more than they lost. And the medical community is not much help. According to a 2015 survey, medical students get 19 hours of education on the subject of nutrition in 4 years of school, and that's 5 hours less than they got in 2006. Yet most doctors consider themselves experts on the subject of nutrition. Typically, medical advice on nutrition is simply something like go on a diet and get more exercise, without providing any specifics, without inquiring into current nutrition and levels of exercise, and without providing a plan. So what's the answer? Well, first, take control of your own life. Learn about nutrition and start filling your shopping cart with nutritious, organic whole foods, and make the junk food a rare celebratory event rather than a daily practice. Start exercising and moving more and improve your hormone health. On this channel, you'll find numerous videos on all of these subjects and more. So please, subscribe to my channel. Hit the like button and share it with your friends and on your social media. And hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video every Tuesday. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.